How many times have you heard that a baby's fever is due to teething? It's a common myth, but is it true? Let's dive into that today. For ages, parents and caregivers worldwide have linked the eruption of new teeth with a spike in a baby's temperature. This myth has been passed down through generations, and even today, it's a widely held belief. Why? Well, teething coincides with the age when babies start to explore the world around them, often putting objects in their mouths. This can lead to exposure to new germs and subsequently a fever. Thus, the two events, teething and fever, have been mistakenly associated. But let's set the record straight. According to science and expert opinions, while teething can cause mild symptoms such as irritability, drooling, and perhaps a slightly elevated body temperature, it does not cause a high fever. The American Academy of Pediatrics states that teething might cause a slight increase in a baby's temperature, but it's usually less than 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not technically a fever. Dr. Claire McCarthy, a pediatrician at Boston Children's Hospital, adds that if a baby has a temperature higher than that, it's more likely due to an illness or infection, not teething. And research supports this. A study published in Pediatrics, the official journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics, found no significant statistical association between teething and high fever. So, what does this mean for you? It means that if your baby has a high fever, it's essential not to simply chalk it up to teething. High fevers can be a sign of something more serious, like an infection, and it's crucial to seek medical advice. Remember, while teething can be a challenging time for both babies and parents, it's not a cause for high fever. So the next time your baby has a fever, don't blame it on the teeth. It's best to seek medical advice. Expecting your baby to sleep through the night? Well, you might want to rethink that expectation. We've all heard it before, the well-meaning advice from friends and family, the endless articles online, all saying the same thing. Your baby should be sleeping through the night. It's become such a common belief that many new parents can't help but feel like they're doing something wrong when their little one wakes up multiple times during the night. But let's pause for a moment and ask ourselves, where did this myth come from? Why do we expect a behavior from babies that's not even common in adults? After all, how many of us can truly say we sleep through the night without waking up at least once? Sleep experts tell us that this myth is not only unrealistic, but it's also not based on the biological needs of babies. Babies have different sleep patterns than adults. Their sleep cycles are shorter, and they spend more time in the light, REM, rapid eye movement stage of sleep, which means they wake up more often. Furthermore, babies need to feed frequently, whether they're breastfed or formula-fed. Their tiny stomachs can only hold so much, so they need to refill often. This, of course, means waking up during the night. Another important factor to consider is that waking up during the night is a survival mechanism for babies. It's a way for them to make sure they're safe and their needs are met. When a baby wakes up, it's their way of checking in, making sure everything's okay. And finally, each baby is unique. Some babies might start sleeping longer stretches at a young age, while others might take a bit longer. It's all part of their individual development and growth. So the next time you find yourself awake in the middle of the night with your baby, remember, it's not a sign of something wrong. It's simply a part of being a baby. Remember, it's normal for babies to wake up during the night. They're not being difficult, they're just being babies. Ever been told not to pick up your baby too much because you'll spoil them? Let's debunk this myth. Picture this. Your baby is fussing, crying, or just looking a little blue. You reach out to pick them up, but then you stop. Why? Because you've heard it said, and perhaps more than once, that picking up your baby too much will spoil them. This myth has been around for ages, causing undue guilt and anxiety for countless parents who simply want to comfort their little ones. The idea behind the myth is that if you always respond to your baby's cries or pick them up whenever they seem upset, they'll become overly dependent on you. They'll never learn to soothe themselves or be content on their own. But let's pause for a moment and consider, is it really possible to spoil an infant by providing too much love and attention? Let's turn to science and expert opinions to shed some light on this. According to research, the answer is a resounding no. In fact, the opposite is true. Responding to your baby's needs actually fosters trust and secure attachment. Babies who are held and comforted when they're upset learn that their feelings are important and that they can rely on their caregivers to help them navigate the world. This lays the foundation for healthy emotional development and resilience in the future. Renowned pediatrician Dr. T. Barry Brazelton emphasizes that you can't spoil a baby. He explains that babies have a need to be held, to hear a heartbeat, a voice, and to feel warmth. When you respond to these needs, you are not spoiling your baby. Instead, you're helping them feel secure, loved, and understood. So let's bust this myth once and for all. Picking up your baby, holding them, responding to their cries, these are not actions that spoil a child. They are actions that build a strong bond of trust, love, and respect between you and your baby. So go ahead, pick up your baby. You're building a strong bond, not spoiling them. Think your baby should be on solids by 6 months? You might want to reconsider. This is a common belief that has been passed down through generations, almost as a milestone marker for infant growth. It's a notion that has found its way into parenting books, blogs, and the advice of well-meaning relatives. It's a myth that has brought about a sense of pressure and anxiety among parents who find their little ones aren't quite ready for the transition to solids when that 6-month mark rolls around. But hold on, before you start worrying about your baby's diet, let's bust this myth wide open. The truth is, the introduction of solids isn't about a specific age. It's about your baby's individual readiness. So, what does readiness look like? It's when your baby can sit up unassisted, showing interest in food, and losing that tongue thrust reflex that pushes food out of their mouth. These are the cues to look for, not a date on the calendar. Now, let's bring in some expert advice. The World Health Organization and the American Academy of Pediatrics both recommend exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, and continued breastfeeding along with appropriate complementary foods up to 2 years of age or beyond. They emphasize that the introduction of solids should not replace breastfeeding but should complement it. Moreover, research has shown that introducing solids too early can lead to a higher risk of obesity and diabetes. It's also important to remember that every baby is unique and will develop at their own pace. Yes, by around 6 months, many babies are ready to start trying solid foods. But it's not a rule, it's a guideline. So if your baby is not ready, that's okay. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong. So the next time someone gives you the side eye because your 6-month-old is not munching on mashed carrots, remember, you're the parent. You know your baby best. So don't stress if your baby isn't eating solids by 6 months. They'll eat when they're ready. We've busted some common baby myths today, haven't we? Let's do a quick recap, shall we? First up, we tackled the myth that teething causes fever. It's easy to see why this one's so prevalent. After all, both teething and fevers tend to appear around the same time in a baby's life. However, science tells us that while teething may cause a slight rise in body temperature, it doesn't typically result in a full-blown fever. So, if your little one has a high temperature, it's best to seek professional advice to rule out other potential causes. Then, we confronted the belief that babies should sleep through the night. While it's a lovely thought for all the sleep-deprived parents out there, it's simply not true. Babies have different sleep patterns to adults, and waking up during the night is perfectly normal. Remember, it's not about training your baby to sleep, but understanding and responding to their needs. We also debunked the myth that you'll spoil your baby if you pick them up too much. Babies crave comfort and security, and responding to their cries helps to build trust and a sense of safety. So don't worry about spoiling them. They're just little and need your love and attention. Lastly, we addressed the idea that babies should be eating solids by 6 months. While some babies might be ready for solids at this age, others might not be. It's important to look for signs of readiness, like being able to sit up unaided rather than sticking rigidly to a timeline. These are just some of the many myths surrounding babies, and it's crucial to remember that every child is unique. What works for one might not work for another, and that's perfectly okay. Instead of relying on myths, it's always best to trust your instincts, observe your child, and consult with professionals when you're unsure. Remember, when it comes to your baby, it's always best to trust your instincts and consult with professionals. Until next time, keep busting those myths.